Hello, my name is Jessica Ramesh. I'm an overseas editor with International Living, and now I'm the new host of a new webcast, the Zen of International Living. And this is our first episode. Woohoo! Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, a couple things before we get to the actual episode. First off, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss a single episode. We're going to be dropping a new one every week. Each one is going to be different. Each one is going to be exciting. And secondly, if you would like a free report, absolutely free, on retiring and relocating overseas, then head on down to the description for this video. You will see a link there. Click on that link to get your free report. That is our gift to you. A thank you for joining us on this new adventure. Now, today I'm going to be talking to Kathleen Evans. Kathleen is an expat. She's a colleague and friend of mine, and she has her very own Eat, Pray, Love story to share with us. And we're going to find out how it all led her to the land of pura vida, or pure life. Ready? Let's talk to Kathleen. Hi, I'm International Living Overseas Editor Jessica Ramesh. Welcome to the Zen of International Living podcast, where we discuss the ways in which international living or an international mindset can impact your well-being and enrich your life. I'm coming to you from my hometown since 2005, Panama City, Panama. Joining me today, author and public speaker Kathleen Evans is, among many other things, a country correspondent for International Living in Costa Rica, meaning that she lives in Costa Rica and travels throughout the country in order to write about it and to speak about it. And though she's now living la vida pura, or the Costa Rican ideal of the pure life, I'll ask her to explain that in a moment. She once started out where many of you are, I suspect, right this minute today, wanting to be happy. And I want to ask Kathleen, before you set out on your journey, Kat's Journey, that's the title of your blog, I want to know whether you knew that you deserved more out of life and could get more out of life, and if that's what led you to look beyond US borders. But first, welcome, Kathleen. Please tell us about the pure life mindset. What's the term in Spanish? How are you living it?
Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me as your very first guest on your inaugural Zen show. I'm thrilled to be here and really appreciate it.
Woo!
Yeah, so pura vida is, it translates, as you mentioned, to pure life. And it is a phrase that you hear in Costa Rica all the time. And it's used in so many different ways, like hola, pura vida, ciao, pura vida, right? So it's a greeting coming and going like aloha. It's also a cheer, hey, salud, cheers, pura vida.
Love that.
You'll hear it all the time, like, how are you? ¿Cómo estás? Pura vida, rather than saying I'm good. So it's a phrase you hear a lot. But it's also much more than that. In the country, it's a mindset. Truly, Costa Ricans believe in the pure life. And I think there's probably so many reasons for that. Living in a country that's just filled with astounding nature. It's a very laid back lifestyle. And Costa Ricans, we call ourselves Ticos. I'm not a Tico, but Costa Ricans call themselves Ticos. And one thing about them is that they very much live in the presence. And there's not a lot of concern about what's already happened. And a lot of people don't worry about tomorrow because you can't change necessarily what's going to happen anyway. So live in the presence. And that adds a certain level of Zen to your lifestyle. And anyone who spends a lengthy amount of time here will feel that too. We're deeply spiritual, connected to the earth. You'll see healing, yoga, alternate medicines, all kind of things that are happening in the land of Pura Vida. So
it sounds like you're talking about a different set of priorities from the ones we were maybe raised with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for a lot of people who end up retiring here or moving here, whether temporarily or permanently, it does become part of your lifestyle, for sure.
Very cool. It's a really interesting outlook, and so interesting too, Kathleen, that you can describe it in so many different ways and it can be used in so many different things. So we're really talking about a lifestyle, an all-encompassing lifestyle here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It can be used negatively too.
That's interesting too. But
yeah, it is.
Kathleen, we see happy expats like you in places like Costa Rica. And I think that we sometimes forget that before they became happy expats, there was a journey. Almost invariably, there was pain and there was self-discovery. And that's okay, that's good, because it seems to lead to some pretty amazing things. And you've been so open with me about a singular crisis period in your life. And I thank you for your willingness to share it now with our listeners, because I believe that your story can help. You didn't so much run to as run from at first. Am I right? I mean, tell us what you were going through and the epiphany or the moment that sparked your leaving home.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Becoming an expat, and I'm fast forwarding here, was kind of running to a lifestyle. But at this time, I was running from. So this was probably about 20 years ago. I call it my early midlife crisis.
I know what that's like.
Maybe I get to have two. I don't know. So I was living in the States in Austin, Texas at the time, and going through some marital difficulties. The relationship was not going well at all. And I was not happy with my corporate America job. It was extremely stressful. And I was searching for myself, something that would make me happier in life, because what I was doing at that moment wasn't working. And I figured there was more out there in the world, right?
There was happiness to be found elsewhere.
Right. And ultimately, you learn that happiness is within yourself, but at this moment, it wasn't. So I had a couple of friends who actually traveled around the world. Single girlfriends traveled around the world and went to all these amazing places, had these great epiphanies, changed their lives. And I was so envious. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. But I had all these responsibilities. I had a home and a mortgage and a car payment and a job with great health benefits and a husband and a dog. And I'm like, can I just leave? Can I just leave? And I did.
Seem impossible. Wow. Yeah.
That can seem impossible. And I'm sure, a lot of people in this crazy world right now are probably thinking the same thing. I'm not happy. I need something more. I need a change of scenery. I need something that's going to make me whole. And so I left for a year. And I traveled around the world alone. And alone.
So this is not with hubby. This is on your own as a single woman.
No, as a single woman traveling alone around the world. And my rule was I could not go anywhere I'd ever been before, because that puts you kind of in that comfort zone, right? And you see those charts with the comfort zone like this, and then the little dot out here says this is where the magic happens. And so there was no tour of the Houses of Parliament in Big Ben and a trip up the Eiffel Tower. No, there was like harder, deeper connection to the earth type places. For example, following the Inca Trail in Peru and the magic that's within that sort of event. Going to South Africa and volunteering with the Red Cross there. Going to India and working with children and families in need. Going to Thailand. I went there near the end of my journey to spend some time on a very remote island where nobody spoke English, and I wanted to work on my book and be introspective and that sort of thing. So this was definitely a completely outside my comfort zone sort of trip.
Right, because if you're going to Paris or to London just to sit there and write a book, I mean, we're talking about first world convenience. It's not going to feel there's so much to see, obviously, but is it really going to feel all that different from home? Are you going to feel like you're actually having an experience that takes you outside of comfort zone and maybe leads to more creativity, more introspection?
Exactly. And it's interesting when you're gone that long and you spend a lot of time alone, because I realized I had never been alone. I grew up with a family, and then I went to school and had roommates, and then I got married and I had a husband, and I was like, I've never been alone. Well, maybe I need to spend some time alone within this and see what I'm really about. And that was a big part of this journey. And that's where actually my blog, which didn't start until years later, Kat's Journey, came from this actual journey 20 plus years ago.
Was that first time going abroad by yourself? What are you feeling? Is it scary? Is it thrilling? Yeah.
By myself, yes. I had been various places. I studied overseas in England and did quite a bit of traveling in Europe. Mm-hmm. That's why the trip had 0 European stops on it. Mm-hmm. Again, outside that comfort zone. And, at the first phase, you're a little homesick, but you're excited, right? I'm doing all these things I've never done, and I'm seeing all these things. So it's very experiential. You're out doing and motivated. And then the next phase, you start to miss a few more things. It's like, oh, I miss my bed, big, comfortable bed, and just little things like that. I miss ice in my drinks, whatever that looks like. And then that last phase is when you really start reaching deep inside you and say, okay, who am I? What am I doing here? What am I looking for? Am I having a conversation with God? Why is he not listening? Do I want to be a better person? I want to make this marriage work, or whatever those things are, So that was the last part of that journey, was not having an epiphany, but reaching deep down within myself.
Because we're not talking about you going away for a few weeks. We're talking about a year spent abroad and on your own, not with family, not with friends, not with your husband.
Right. And so, there's things you learn very quickly, and, there's some safety precautions you have to take as a woman traveling alone. Things like dressing appropriately for the culture. You don't want to be a target out there. You want to blend in when you're alone and you're single, especially in a place where you may not speak a word of the language. So you have to think of things like that. Unfortunately, as a woman, you have to think of it more than being a man alone. So if you're getting into a tuk-tuk in a foreign country, is that tuk-tuk safe? I would do things like, what's your name? Write down all these things. And now today, certainly you'd take a picture and you do some things to ensure that you're okay, tell the hotel manager where you're going, and look for little red flags along the way. That'll keep you safe. I mean, I had this moment where I was on an elephant. I did an elephant tour with some little tour guide who lived in a cave in this island in southern Thailand. And I was on this elephant and I thought, this guy could murder me and no one would find my remains for a month, 2 months. Who would even know where I am? Because nobody knew I was on this remote island in Thailand. So there's little things that you can do along the way just to ensure your safety as a woman.
Right. And we've all done that thing where we're like, maybe that wasn't the smartest thing, but hopefully we learned from it, and then going forward, we're a little smarter.
Be careful with your cocktails and, that sort of thing. So, yeah. But the biggest takeaway, and like I said, I was waiting for the great epiphany where this message from the universe would just come into my head and say, here's your next pathway, do it. And that didn't happen. But I learned that I can survive alone, that I can live with myself alone, and that I can have a conversation with the voice in my head and turn it into a positive experience rather than listening to a negative voice in my head. That was really important for me. So the takeaway was, I knew I loved the world, right? And I wanted to see more of it. But I needed to be a responsible human being and go back to my life and get everything in order, because I had to move on to the next great thing.
Right. So we're talking about you having this moment where you say, I need to leave, I need to get away. At that time, did you know that it was going to be a year, or were you just kind of taking things as they come and it ended up being?
I pretty much actually had a year planned out in my head. I'm a budgeter and a planner at heart. So to completely freewheel wasn't in my DNA. So I sold some things. I had a budget, and closer, not even a full year into it, I realized the budget wasn't enough. And SARS broke out, and I was in Asia. And at that time, no one knew what sort of pandemic that was going to be.
Wow,
but
right.
Asia were, I think this was 2003, early 2003, I was there. Mm-hmm. And I cut it a little bit short, so it was really more like 11 months. But yeah, the latter part was a little freewheeling because I couldn't really book things that far in advance. And at that time, you couldn't even book a flight that far in advance.
Right. Okay. And so tell me what's happening then towards the end of your trip when you're looking at coming back home again, being the responsible person, going back to your life, and going back to the marriage. What did that look like when you came back? What did you draw from your experiences that helped you get through the next year and to where you are today?
Yeah, so I actually, my husband and I decided to take a little break. Being away for a year, traveling alone didn't fit into his equation of a perfect wife. Mm-hmm. We actually did split up for a time, and my father was dying of cancer. So I went back to Chicago to spend some time with him for that following year, actually, when I returned. And that was a pretty amazing experience. Because I never would have been able to do that. I mean, I wasn't coming back to a job. They don't usually hold a sales job for someone for a year. So I had a husband, a marriage on hold, and a non-existent job. And I was like, this is a very good time for me to spend some time back home in cold, blustery Chicago, but have some real precious time with my father I never would have had I been far away. So
Wow.
I guess that was kind of the second year of flow through this, finding myself, finding happiness, and realized I had left Chicago once before, and there was a good reason I wanted to leave again. So I did come back at that time to Austin and started repairing all the little things there. And it came together. It was easier. Nothing was insurmountable. You can do this. And so just little stitches, I ran back to life. And then we put our house in order, and over time started making the plan to actually live in Costa Rica.
This is amazing because we talk to expats all around the world. You and I both talk to our colleagues and other expats around the world. And obviously in our travels have also spoken to people. And this idea keeps coming back up for me that at the time when you're doing it, things may not always seem to make sense. Or you may doubt the wisdom of having embarked on your plan to either travel the world or live for a while abroad. And yet, when all is said and done, when we're looking back, invariably, I've never had anybody tell me it wasn't worth it. I didn't learn a ton. And people do move back to the US. Not everybody stays an expat forever. For a lot of people, it's a great experience. And eventually they want to get back to where the grandkids are, or they have other reasons for returning. But invariably, everybody says, I only wish I had done it sooner. It was absolutely worth it, even if there were moments of, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yes, that's natural to have those moments for sure, and I have people say to me, gosh, all that money you spent traveling around the world, don't you wish you had all that back? Well, okay, yeah, that would be nice, but then I've amazing experiences and tapping into cultures and helping people and all these things that fulfilled me, that made me the person I am today. So yeah, and as you say, expats can be transient. We probably see that in every community to some extent, and that's okay. It's okay to have a plan and then it changes. It's fine, right?
Yeah. If anything, the expat experience makes you more adaptable to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I was just writing an article for International Living about how some communities are transient more than others, and how people have very good reasons for moving on. Whether, as you said, they want to be close to the grandkids that they never had before, or some sort of health issue that they'd rather take care of in their home country.
Right.
There's positive reasons for leaving too, because some people realize this wasn't the fit that I thought it was, or it filled me up for 5 years, but I'm an explorer at heart, and now I want to move on to the next place. And
Right.
all reasons are okay. And as you said, it makes you adaptable for the next change. And my dad used to say the only thing constant is change. And so we have to be prepared for it the best we can.
Right. And we see that a lot too in Panama, and I'm sure you in Costa Rica. I have expats who moved to Panama from other countries. They were living in South Africa, New Zealand, wherever, end up in Panama. And then likewise, we have people moving from Panama I know a couple moving from Panama to Portugal in the next few months. So it really is it opens you up to all the different experiences. And there are people who are very, very happy spending 3 years here and 3 years there, and just being able to experience different cultures. I gotta say, Kathleen, in talking about where you started and looking at your life now, I think what an amazing experience you had and what an amazing place you ended up. But before we get to your life right now, you're done with the year, you've come back, you're spending quality time with your dad. And tell me about the book. Tell me about the decision to move to Costa Rica. What's happening with that before we get to where you are now in Costa Rica?
Okay, so the book I had planned to do while I was in Thailand actually never materialized. I spent a good month on that little island in the middle of nowhere, feeling sorry for myself, and crying in the rainy season, so you couldn't tell the rain from my tears, kind of thing. I was a kind of a pathetic human being at that moment.
I think we've all been there too.
But got me through it. So that book didn't materialize, but I would tell people about these adventures, and over a couple of drinks, the storytelling gets more grandiose. And I would have people telling me, you should write a book. You should write a book, and I was never into that you should thing. But then I thought, I could write something. I could do some sort of memoir, like an Eat, Pray, Love, but kind of a different focus. And I thought about that, and I said, but I'm not a writer. And at that time, my background was in media sales. So I was around writing a lot, and I loved writing, but I wasn't a published writer. And I thought, well, if I'm going to pour my heart and soul into a memoir, I want it to be really good. So I'm going to do a lot of other writing projects first before I ever get to this memoir thing, right? So I ended up going to a writer's seminar, a retreat in Nicaragua several years ago, because I really needed some help in the basics of writing and the foundation of creating characters, because I wanted to write a fiction book initially. And so I started working on that, and ended up hiring the lovely woman who put on the retreat to help me over the course of almost a year write this book. And it's still a work in progress, but then the opportunity came up to write for International Living through another writer that I knew in new writing circles. And so that's kind of how this all came full circle as far as the writing part of it. And now I've been with IL since early 2018, and it's been such an amazing experience to be an expat and to write about being an expat, and then meeting people all over the country and really all over the world and sharing their stories too. So, wow, right? What a really cool. And I was a subscriber to International Living back in the 90s. I know you've heard this story before. Not everybody has. Right. And I was absolutely wowed when I picked it up. I have a paper version right here, right? It was sitting on the counter at a friend's parents' house. And I opened it up and I was just mesmerized by every page. And that was planting the seed. And this is long before there was the internet, right? This is the early 90s, not long before. Okay. I'm not that ancient. Pre-internet. And so I tore out the little subscriber card, filled it out. Right. And some of the listeners here will remember that.
Absolutely.
Put my check in the mail. And then every month I would get my magazine and be like, I could do this. I could do this. So it came full circle now that I'm writing for them, which is really cool.
It is really cool. And I got to chime in with you there. We have an amazing job. Yeah. I love what I do too. Let's talk then about so you've discovered international living. Let's talk about you're discovering Costa Rica, you're zeroing in on it, and what went into the decision to make the move. What caught your eye first? How did it get on your radar even? And what went into the decision to make the move?
Yeah, my husband and I were back together, all good, long term. We had been travelers, and a lot of times we'd look at International Living and say, hey, there's this, cool town in Belize, and real estate's cheap down there. We ought to go check it out. So in our travels, we'd travel for fun, but then we'd also pop in, maybe go with a real estate agent somewhere. So
Right.
we looked at countries all around the world, actually, but then we started zeroing in on reality, and we wanted to be closer to the United States. So it was an easy flight back and forth. And we kept zeroing in, and it's like, let's make this checklist. Okay, here's our list of criteria. Here's what we're looking for. We're planners, and I know that the happy expat has done their due diligence, right? So they at least have a very good idea about what life is going to be like and what their budget is going to be like, right?
Right.
So we made this list of criteria. We wanted an easy residency process, or at least a straightforward one where we could qualify. I won't say any residency process is necessarily easy, but one that's straightforward. We could qualify for it. We could have access to good health care in a national type healthcare program if we wanted to go that route. We wanted a lower cost of living, of course. I think everybody's looking for that in general. Safety was important to us. A stable government was important to us. And so this is kind of the list that we started with. Mm-hmm. And ease of travel back and forth was important, and the price of flights was important. And so it just kept narrowing down to Costa Rica, and we would go back, we'd return again and again, and started looking at real estate. And it was like, yeah, I think this is what's going to work. It was that pura vida. It kept coming back, and the people and the warmth and the feeling of connection to the earth.
The pure life.
Yeah, the pure life, right? So there are only 2 places in the world where I've done yoga, and I have felt during yoga a vibration from the earth. I know that sounds a little new agey, but feeling the earth, right? There's a little trembling under your feet. One was in India, and one was in Costa Rica. And that was kind of those wow moments, right? And I was like, I think this is it. This is the place.
That sounds like an amazing experience.
Yeah. So
Tamarindo.
And Tamarindo, yeah. We're in a beach town. Another one of my criteria was I wanted to see and hear the ocean every day. It's very soothing, and that was important. So we looked at a lot of beach towns. We wanted someplace with a lot of things to do. We're overall social people. We like dining out. We like hearing live music in a normal world. And
not a pandemic world, you're saying?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So we narrowed it down to a couple of beach towns, and Tamarindo won out. So
I have to say, I look at your photos and your videos and your articles telling us about your current hometown, Tamarindo, and every time, it strikes me as a life of beauty. So social, so full of laughter, and just really surrounding yourself with the beauty of nature. Was that something that you felt like you didn't necessarily have back in Austin, or even back in the days when you were in Chicago?
I would say yes and no. So in Austin's also a very social type of city. There's right. A lot to do, lots of foodies, lots of great live music. So all of that existed, in the bubble of Austin. Certainly not the natural beauty. And Austin is landlocked. It has some lakes, but yeah. So you take that model and then you add all the other great things, the natural beauty, the monkey outside my window howling in the morning, because a truck drove by. That's my alarm clock. And, beach walks. So rejuvenating to be out there and just feel the sand between your toes and, smell the ocean. There's just something pretty amazing about it. So, we've been here nearly 8 years now, and I do not regret the decision to leave.
No regrets about moving to Costa Rica.
Yeah, no regrets. No regrets.
Amazing. I have to say, your story is really just, Kathleen, it really resonated with me, and I really do feel like it's going to help a lot of people who are listening and who can understand, based on your story, that we didn't have it all figured out. We made some mistakes. We traveled on our own. Maybe it took us some time to figure out what the right place was for us to be. But in the end, it's so inspiring to know that you can make those mistakes and do it. Not just that you can do it, but that you can make those mistakes and try different places and do it. And, and who knows? You think you're going to stay in Tamarindo, or might there be somewhere else that you want to live and explore as a resident?
Well, I think Costa Rica will always be a part of our lives. Mm-hmm. We have our permanent residency here, which comes with perks, especially when you're looking at the national healthcare system, which is so good. And always knowing that that's kind of a safety net for us.
Absolutely.
We are explorers, right? So we're looking at a perfect world to have 3 footprints in 3 countries. The United States obviously will always be a part of that. We have family there, friends there. Currently still have some rental property there. So that will always be part of our lives. And Costa Rica will always be part of our lives. But we're thinking of possibly somewhere in the EU, possibly somewhere in Asia. And, we'll see what that model looks like. But, once you move and you own something somewhere, you can Airbnb it. You could do a home swap with someone in a different country. So it's
so many options.
Keep a home in, an area like Tamarindo where it's very high demand. Keep a place in Austin that we already rent out. And so we could each year sample a new country, and do a home swap for 3 months and live in Malta, for example, or, live in Singapore. So the world is your oyster when you open it up and realize there's so many opportunities. And if you love exploring and love embracing new cultures and new traditions, there are some great ways that you can do it that aren't going to cost a lot of money to actually do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great point. Well, hey, that's our time today. And Kathleen, I want to thank you, a big thank you. As you said, you're my first guest. Thank you for sharing so honestly, so generously.
It's been a thrill to be with you, Jessica. I really appreciate it. And, on a parting note, I saw a meme the other day that really kind of hit home with me. It said, we can all be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time.
Love that. Absolutely. Yeah. Love that. Well, thanks, Kathleen. And to our listeners, thank you. Please, please, please subscribe and leave us your comments. What we do for you. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.
Pura vida.